Welcome to Panels and Borders. I'm Dominic. So, it has finally come out. JawBreakers, the book. So here is the book, the forbidden book that kicked up such a huge stink. The one that was going to come out through Antarctic Press, but Mark Waid interfered and squashed it. And there's still an ongoing lawsuit for that. And a lot of people on Twitter, people on the anti-comicsgate side, were saying that this book was never going to come out and that Richard C. Meyer was just a con artist and con people out of their money. But he actually delivered on his Kickstarter or his Indiegogo campaign, which is more than I can say for some other artists out there that were against diversity in comics, whose Kickstarters has still not been fulfilled, and some other people who basically took the money and ran. And so he did deliver on a product. A lot of people said this wasn't going to come out, and it did come out. So now I read it yesterday when it came in the mail, and now's the time to see if he can actually put up a good story. But now, before I get into actually reviewing the book, there is one thing I have to talk about, and it's something that's going to have to be improved upon, I think, for future Indiegogos that he does. So when this came in the mail yesterday, this is what it came in. So it came in this bubble mailer right here, and it came shrink wrapped between these two boards. Now this is the improved version of the packing. The original ones that went out didn't have this shrink wrapping on it, so a lot of them were damaged. So mine was one of the ones that got the new improved shipping packaging before it got sent out. So this is nice, but this here is still, I think, in my opinion, completely inadequate, this bubble mailer. Because as you can see right here, I'll hold it up, you can see there is a bit of a bend right here in this board, and like these boards are really flimsy. So when I opened it, I was really worried my book was going to be damaged. So because there is a bit of slight damage right here in the corner. There's a slight crease right here. Now it's not, it's only minor, and it's not enough that I would send the book back or anything. But my recommendation would be in the future is to avoid using these bubble mailers, because I have a post office box, and so the mail guy or whatever probably just bent it and rammed it in there like that. So the best way I think to do it would be to use an actual box that can't be bent, like what Amazon does or something. So that's something I would like to see in the future for any future Indiegogos that Richard C. Meyer does. So yeah, that I would improve the mailer. I would improve that in the future. So I wouldn't use the bubble mailer anymore. I would go with an actual box. So before I get into going through what I liked and what I didn't like about this book, I'm just gonna just put it out there. There's going to be spoilers in this, and basically I'm going to just kind of quickly give a rundown of the plot. So basically the plot is, in this quick summary of the plot, is the JawBreakers are hired to go to Africa and take out a gigantic ape that has been basically terrorizing the countryside. But the ape is not what it seems to be. The gorilla is actually was an ordinary gorilla and somehow ended up in another dimension and got transformed into a giant one and has been separated from his soul. And there's a mercenary army after the gorilla because the gorilla is swallowed a bunch of armies and his stomach is full of gold, and they want the treasure that's inside the gorilla. And so they have to end up helping. They end up fighting the gorilla, but then they end up helping it to trying to get it back to its to the dimension where it can find its soul, while they're battling a cybernetic African warlord. And so that's the first part of the book. And then the last two stories deal with the JawBreakers having to go to a city that has been basically all the superheroes in that city have been wiped out, but the city has been turned into a paradise by a character named the God King, who is basically just controls everyone, and so no one commit any crimes because they are all under control of this God King. And so the JawBreakers are sent there to take out this God King. So that is basically the plot of the two main stories in this. So now with that, I'll get into what I liked about the book and what I didn't like about the book. The book is broken up into 3 stories. So the first story is drawn by John Malin, and then it actually goes into this book that's like their first adventure. And then, it goes into book 3. This is almost like a very Kirby-esque style book. So this last one. So it's broken up into 3 stories. So John Malin draws the first part of the book, and then there's different artists for the last 2 stories. And the way the story is set up, I thought was kind of neat, is they just drop them. The story starts off, you're at the end of one of their missions. So one of their missions is just ending. It seems like, and the next story kind of starts off like that. They're just finishing off a mission, and then they go into their next one. So that's how each story seems to kind of start, which I kind of like that. Thought that was cool. And it kind of reminded me of this team, and a lot of people are comparing these guys to G.I. Joe, but what it made me think of, because they're a bunch of mercenaries for hire, this made me think of the A-Team from the 80s. Superpowered A-Team. That's what. So number 1, the cover art. So the cover art is done by Ethan Van Sciver, and it looks really good. And with the coloring and all that combined, has a really good cover. I really like the cover. And so number 1, the cover art. And so just to go on to the interior of the book, so you can see that it's signed. And to go into the interior artwork of John Malin, it's really good. Now, I'm not familiar with John Malin's artwork. So this is actually the first story I think I've ever read that's been drawn by John Malin. So his artwork has that 90s feel to it, which really works for the story. So the interior artwork, as you can see, is really good. So I like the interior artwork, and what Richard C. Meyer is going for is like a 90s feel, and it works. The third thing I like is, overall, I think the story was pretty good for someone who's not a professional writer. I think this actually has a pretty solid story, and it's pretty simple, straightforward, straight to the point type story, and so that was good. So one of the characters I really like in this, for things I like, is the design of this cyborg guy right here. This guy's got a really, really cool design, that cyborg guy with the hat. He's one of my favorite things about this story. I really like that character. And I'd like to see that character come back in some future JawBreakers stories. And the fifth thing was the overall design, or the overall 90s feel to the story. It definitely has that. This could have easily have fit in with Image back in the 90s. Like this team, the way the comics drawn, everything. This could have been early 90s, mid 90s Image comic. Easy. So now we'll get on to things I didn't like about the book. So in the story, I didn't really care for the character of, I believe it's Zaxi or Zazie. I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but the female character in there, I didn't really feel she did a whole lot in the story. I thought she was going to have a bigger, well, she did have a big part, but I thought she was going to be more of a permanent member of the team, and she doesn't really do a lot, and she kind of gets killed off. Which I thought that actually kind of disappointed me that the character was killed off. I wasn't expecting that. And the kind of like bit of the romance between her and Cuffs, that didn't really work for me. So this character didn't really work for me. I thought she should have been more an integral part of the team, and I don't think she should have been killed off the way she was in the story. So there's that. And when I was reading the story, I wasn't really clear on what the powers were of some of the team members. The one team member, Silk, he can create like these like energy things out of energy ribbons, like parachutes and gliders and rope and stuff like that. And but there's a scene where he actually gets thrown by Cuffs, and he basically goes right through this gorilla's head like a bullet. So I was wondering, now, is he indestructible, or does he have super strength too? So I wasn't really clear on that. they kind of clarify his powers more in the other stories about that. So there's, and then the team member of Devil Dog, I'm not sure if he has any powers or if he's just like an armored guy. And then the same thing with Hell Priest. I wasn't really clear on what his powers were first reading the first story. So there's that too. So that was kind of a thing. It was kind of a little bit foggy on what some of their powers were. So yeah, so the last story just ends. So, which I guess they could have put in, like, would have been nice to have to be continued, or that's the way it's written. So that's the last page, and it just goes on, okay, what's going to happen next? Oh, shit, that's the end. Okay, I guess that's the end of it. But it kind of ends right in the middle of a story. So, there was that. And there was a couple things in here, like, panel-wise, I found a little bit confusing, a couple nitpicks in here. So this scene here is kind of where I wasn't really sure what happened in this scene. Like, it wasn't really clear what. So they can hear a heartbeat beat, and then apparently they're on top of the gorilla. And then this is a scene of the gorilla actually smashing up through the ground. But there almost should have been, I think, another scene in here that shows the ground starting to erupt and then starting to get launched into the air, and then it flicks over to that scene. It's almost like there's a transition scene that's kind of missing with that. So that I thought was a little bit confusing, and like there should have been a transition scene there. So the next thing is this panel right here. So he's given his minion crap here, but this dude has a big hole blown in him, but he's somehow still alive, and then he breaks his neck and finishes him off. But now I don't know why, if he was just going to break his neck, why draw the hole and all the blood running down through him? Because if you had a hole that big in your stomach right through the other side, you'd be dead. And so that scene didn't really make any sense. So I wasn't really sure what the thought process there was with drawing him with a big hole through him. As the team overall, so the team is made up of the leader is Silk, you got Cuffs, Hell Priest, and then Devil Dog down here, and then their pilot, their kind of getaway driver guy is Kill Switch, and then you got Knife Hand. That name kind of makes me laugh, Knife Hand. And so two of my favorite characters on the team is actually Cuffs and Knife Hand. So Knife Hand can charge his hands, and he can basically cut up anything. So he, like, you know, slices and dices a bunch of guys in the comic and stuff like that. That's the other thing. They don't hold back on the violence. So overall, I thought this was pretty good. This was a pretty fun read overall. And now, would I get the sequel to this? Yes, I would. I'd be very curious to see what a follow-up like this would be, and what kind of art team would be in on that one. Would he get John Malin back, or would he get someone else? And I'd be kind of curious to see, because there was talks he was actually going to get Chuck Dixon to write JawBreakers story. So I actually really like Chuck Dixon's writing. I'm currently reading some of his old Robin stuff, and I'm really enjoying it. So I'd really be curious to see what someone like Chuck Dixon would do with a team like this. I'd be really curious. And as for Richard C. Myers' writing, you can kind of see from the older stories that because some of these stories are older Jawbreaker ones that he has in the book, you can see that his writing gets better. So as time goes on, so I can see his writing would get better and better and better over time. And so overall, I'm happy with this product, and I'm glad I got it. A few nitpicks with the artwork here and there, and then a little bit of damage down the corner, but overall, I'm happy with it, and I think it was a worthwhile purchase. And I'm glad I got the book, and I will definitely get in on the sequel. So that basically sums up everything I got to say about this book. So let me know what you think in the comments section, and I will see you at the next one. Thank you to all of my subscribers, and thank you for watching this video. And if you're new to the channel, like, subscribe, and share. And don't forget to hit the bell icon for notification when new videos are uploaded.